let's talk about tipping culture.
Okay.
You guys have a tipping culture in America. Who do you tip?
Waiters, bartenders, cab drivers, delivery drivers. I mean, maybe a few other things, but that's most of it.
How much do you tip?
I think typically it's about 20%.
What happens if you don't tip them?
They will be angry at you. You know, I've heard cases of waiters yelling at a customer or chasing a customer out of the restaurant to yell at them or something, right? But I think 99% of the time, they won't say anything, they won't do anything. But there will still be like that awkward moment, you know, where they see that like the no tip and they just kind of like anger will boil up inside of them and they're just gonna try to be quiet. You know, if you're a bad person and you can accept them feeling that way and you can feel fine about yourself, then go ahead and don't tip, you know.
So if you don't tip, you become a bad person?
I think it's wrong to not tip because the waiter is expecting to be tipped. You know they are expecting to be tipped. You might not agree with that system, but you know that that is the system. So if you knowingly go in there when he is expecting a tip, you're a bad person if you don't tip them. Unless the service is like terrible.
So that means that if the service was poor, I don't have to tip?
Yeah, technically. But it depends. Like, it has to be real poor for a 0 tip. And you still are going to have to be prepared to get into, like, an argument or whatever. Normally, the type of waiter or waitress that would give service worthy of a 0 tip is also going to be the person who's not afraid to, like, get into an argument, right? But also, I think a lot of people want to use that as an excuse to not tip, too. Like, oh, like, but the service was poor. You know, that's why I didn't tip. You know, like, it took him 90 seconds to bring me my Pepsi. Like, that's poor service. You know, it's like, no, that's not poor service. That's standard service, whatever. You know what I mean? And normally, if the food takes a long time, it's not the waiter's fault. It's the kitchen's fault because they're backed up. And you should blame them. You shouldn't hurt the waiter for it, in my opinion.
I think some people might confuse that if they don't do a good service, they might think that that's a bad service, and they might think that that's like a 0 tip service.
Oh, yeah. If you order food, they get the food, they bring you the food, they're not rude or like mean, that's 20%.
Okay, so the difficult situation is like this. They do their job, they bring you food, but they're not having an attitude, maybe because I'm Asian. Should I
But this
tip?
is the reason that they might be a little bit rude to you is because Asians are notorious for not tipping. Or at least not like all Asians, but like people from outside of America, right? Waiters, waitresses, they don't like foreigners. Because for whatever reason, foreigners sometimes don't tip very well, right? So maybe it becomes like a vicious cycle. They don't tip. So they don't like you, so they treat you worse, and then they treat you worse, so you don't tip, right? Like, it goes kind of back and forth. Like, that's possible. The idea that we even have to have this conversation is proof as to why tipping should be abolished. It's nonsense. Just pay your employees. Yeah. All this kind of happened while I've been living in Korea. And I didn't really know about it until I went back to visit last summer. But during the pandemic, it was very difficult for takeout restaurants, all restaurants, coffee shops even. It was very difficult for these places to stay in business. So they started asking for tips everywhere. So when we were in New York this summer, I went to a coffee shop and I was just like, hey, can I get like it's like a hot coffee? I pay with my card and on the screen it's like, would you like to tip? And I'm like, it's kind of weird. I was just like, no tip. And then, like, the lady brings me my coffee, she looks at the receipt, and she kind of, you know, gives me a little bit of, like, an attitude. Not, like, overtly, but just a little, like, oh, okay, oh, this motherfucker just want to tip me, okay, alright, that's cool. You know what I mean? And I'm just kind of like, am I supposed to tip? Like, where have I been for the past, you know, few years? I think most people still are not going to tip at a coffee shop or, like, any takeout place or something. It just seems wrong. Like, all she did is turn around, put a cup down, and hit the coffee button. And she wants, like, $1 for that. Like, now it's kind of starting to go too far, even. So people might just be like, alright, This whole thing just needs to stop. Like, all this tipping nonsense just needs to stop. I hope it goes there. But until it does, if you go to a sit-down restaurant with a waiter or waitress, just tip, because you know you're supposed to, you know?